At Mercury, we're driving marine innovation forward with intelligent, intuitive solutions that improve the boating experience. All of our investments in engineering and in manufacturing over the last 15 years have given us incredible capabilities to deliver advanced technology to the industry. We completely reimagined outboard performance to design an engine that delivers boaters the freedom, luxury, and power to pursue their passions on the water. I'm proud to represent the more than 7,000 Mercury employees across the globe in introducing the most advanced outboard ever designed, the new Mercury 7.6-liter V12 600 horsepower Verado. The future of outboard performance begins today.
This segment is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly.
Powerfully crafted, gracefully refined.
We're kind of kidding around here because we won't tell you who the voiceover is, but I think it's related to our next guest that's coming up in just a few minutes. Bob Izumi been a big part of just Canadian fishing in general. He's been an icon at so many different levels, and we refer to him as the Al Lindner of Canada, only because he's got all kinds of information. He does it all. He's not afraid to compete on that competitive level to say, hey, whether and he's very, very he's done very well. He won the Quinte Cup last year, which is a very prestigious event down in the Bay of Quinte. So he does very, very well in that scene. So we're going to be having him on in just a few minutes. We're going to cut off with one more commercial, but I do want to thank everybody who's come on. Jeremy did a great job earlier, and Ted Takasaki. It would have been actually great to put Bob into that mix too, because he's friends with all those guys. And maybe next year, we'll have him maybe do something with the walleye segment. But I'm really excited. Bob will be up very shortly, and we're just going to go commercial break and come right back with Bob Izumi.
When there's miles of water in front of you and hundreds of feet below, you need a boat with the chops to dominate, no matter the conditions. With the strength and technology to overcome the elements and the competition. Ranger Boats, still building legends, one at a time.
Yep. You're live. You wear glasses? I didn't think you wore glasses.
Costco specials. three for $20.
I got the same ones, man. So, I've been really looking forward to this, Bob. Not going to lie to you, because it's you're one of those guys. I know we're friends, but I always look up to you, and this is kind of up and personal with you, which is kind of really cool because we did this on one of our chats one night, and we kind of started going all these directions, and I'm thinking we're going to get so many questions that's going to happen today too.
Well, I'm at home and I'm in the bathroom. Okay. So all the different rooms in the house have different themes, but they're all fish. So this is all bass in here. This is more of a formal living room. I'm way over the far side of it. So I'm in the bathroom instead of the bathroom, which would be inappropriate, I think. So here we are, Andy Paletta. We are on the virtual Spring Fishing and Boat Show. And
we are.
Just so you know, I know, that, a lot of us have been home bound lately. I am wearing my daytime pajamas, okay? I switched from my nighttime to my daytime pajamas just to, and I'm wearing some of my nicest undergarments. I'm really set up today. I got put a little bit of, attractant on, some Gulp Alive. I'm feeling good.
Have you been following this whole Bassmaster Elites this weekend? Like Darren says, you're probably glued to it, driving your wife nuts. Is that?
Well, yeah, there's a couple tournaments going on. FLW on Okeechobee, and I spent a lot of time at Okeechobee over the years I have, and usually I hit it every year when I'm in Florida. I'll swing over and fish it for a few days to see what's happening, and they're catching them down there. And a couple of guys I know are in the top 5 right now. Miles Berghoff and Billy McDonald, Skeet Reese, they're all doing very well today. And then of course you got the Bassmaster Elite Series on the St. John's happening live too, and it's got Jeff Gustafson, Chris and Corey Johnston that are all in the top 50 right now and making the third day cut. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and I'm just sitting here in rural Milton, and it's funny because I miss being on the road. I haven't been ice fishing yet this winter. I don't know if I will because I live here out in the boonies outside of Milton. I have to drive to get to an ice fishing place. And, if I take that Snow Bear with that nice enclosed trailer and it's got all our, sponsors and stuff on and picture of the Snow Bear, and everybody's going to know I'm out. So I'm trying to be, responsible and not out there, ice fishing. And I know that, that is good social distancing. Don't get me wrong, for you folks that have been doing a lot of ice fishing, I envy you, but it's just that I have to drive quite a ways to get, either Simcoe or wherever I may go, any or that. So I've just been hanging low, but it's been a busy winter, that's for sure.
I only because like Ted Takasaki touched, I didn't realize he had a Snow Bear too, right? And I know you guys did it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he got tied up with Snow Bear I probably about half a dozen years ago, and we spent some time having dinner together at the Snow Bear Jamboree, which is up on Lake Winnipeg, and that was fun in Gimli, Manitoba, a few winters back, and it was fun. He actually, it was really funny. So my neighbor was with us, and this real off topic, but I'll just tell you a cute story. So we're sitting there, and my neighbor was with us, my old neighbor. And oh no, it actually wasn't my neighbor. It was a friend of Wayne. So what happened is Ted was giving away an ice fishing trip, right, with him, like a day ice fishing as part of this thing. And this buddy of my brother's, goes to Ted during the dinner and say, "Hey, if I win it, can I just get the money instead of what you think that's worth, rather than you taking me fishing?" And Ted's trying to explain to him that no, it's a day of fishing, it doesn't really have a cash value. And this guy went on and on with Ted for about 10 minutes. Then finally I went over and I had to interrupt and tell Ted that he was just pulling your leg, because Ted was serious and so nice, trying to say to him, no, he's not going to give him money instead of taking him fishing.
He's a super nice guy, dude. He's a super nice guy. But the Snow Bear component, dude, they're not that, they're in that $100,000 range, or maybe a little bit less than that. I think they were a lot less than that with the dollars. They've kind of gone up a little bit. But, when you're talking buying a fully rigged fishing boat nowadays, $100,000 is the norm almost. You know what I mean? I know it sounds crazy to say that. And if you're for an avid angler, no, we're not talking about an average, but a guy who's right into it. I don't know, is it worth, you're doing a lot with the Snow Bears, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at a Snow Bear as it's the Rolls Royce of ice fishing. I mean, it's you can go with ATVs and snowmobiles and Argos and all kinds of different, mechanical machines that'll get you out there. This, with the Snow Bear, you can fish in it. And, and let's face it, that's not in everybody's snack bracket. No. That's a lot of bread. Yeah. It's a lot of money. But by the same token, it's, so are, Cadillacs and Rolls Royces and Bentleys and all those things. And they can't, this year they sold everything they had, everything they made, and they're behind on production because the orders are there. So, there's a market for them. And, some people take ice fishing so serious that, in my 40 plus years of being in the fishing business, what I've noticed is there's a lot of Canadians that ice fish that don't fish during the open water season. Yeah, and true. That's their passion, is ice fishing. So, I mean, let's face it, it's popular right across the country and also in the northern U.S. And when you get that many people participating, you're always going to get a small percentage of them that are going to spend a lot of money to do it, and that's why, you know, people buy fancy bass boats and other fishing boats, saltwater boats and things. It's you know, different strokes for different folks. And I've always said, hey, you know, get what you can afford and enjoy this sport of fishing, and that's really the bottom line. I mean, I remember when I was 18 years old, I got a loan for my first boat, and I partnered with an old friend of mine, George McTavish, on a bass boat, and that was a glass-drawn bass boat with an 85 horsepower used motor, and the boat was new. And then I got another bass boat made in Tennessee called Adventure, and then I got tied up with Ranger around 1980. And but you know, I mean, I was so broke I couldn't pay attention in the early years of this fishing career, and we grew up very poor in Blenheim, raised by a single parent. But I always bought what I could afford or what the bank would give me for a loan back in those early years. And I remember my dad, when he was alive, he co-signed for me for the first couple of boats that I had, and you know, that's, you know, and he made a very modest living as a chef at St. Joseph's Hospital in Chatham, but and you know, he spent all his money on all us kids to go fishing, me and all the neighborhood kids, my brother and two sisters. So, you know what, it was a great way to be brought up. But I've always got nice equipment, even when I didn't have two pennies to rub together. It's just that I worked several jobs in those early years, even as a kid in high school and even public school. I worked on farms and stuff, and all that money went to fishing stuff. And well, nothing changes. It still goes to all that fishing stuff. You see what I've collected this winter. Here's a little tip for all these folks that are watching right now. I've been buying left, right, and center. Curbside pickup, a little bit off the internet, all kinds of stuff. Fishing stuff. Getting ready for like that tournament that you hold in Trenton, the Canada Cup, and all the other
when you won.
Fish, the one in Cornwall, all those tournaments. Okay, I'm getting ready for them. And there is going to be, just like last year, a shortage in fishing equipment this year.
Yeah.
Manufacturers can't keep up with the demand. It went through the roof with COVID-19, with people getting involved in fishing. People had time on their hands. They figured it's a great way to social distance. They were buying it left, right, and center. Stores were low on stock. Distributors were low. Manufacturers couldn't make it fast enough. And of course, you know, a lot of stuff made in China was, you know, pushed pretty hard, making PPE equipment and other things too. So, you know, just everybody wanted stuff made. So I've been buying a lot of stuff, getting ready for this season. And if you ask my wife, I hope she's not listening right now, but I try to use, you know, maybe credit cards that she might not look at as much, but I've been stockpiling and getting ready. And I've talked to a number of retailers, and I know, Andy, you have a lot of retailers that are at the Spring Fishing and Boat Show as well. Who do you normally have at the spring?
Well, I talked about this earlier because like these dealers that we deal with that are doing the shows, and they do like usually they do like a whole run of shows, and you'll see them in different areas and some of them in your backyard. But like Brian at Fishing Depots and Natural Sports Nelson and Pro Jays and Pro Tackle out in Belleville. You know, the thing about these guys that are doing shows, like they're gearing up for a lot of tackle like prior to the winter, whereas a lot of other guys kind of wait until the seasons start coming in because they don't need to spend the money and sit on it. So, and I think that's beneficial to, especially over last year. Like Nelson, if you go into his website, it's like loaded with product, right? And so is Pro Jays and obviously, you know, Brian at Fishing Depot. So yeah, you're right. I agree with you 100%. Like last year, I went into Bass Pro Shops last year and it was kind of like, you know, what's going on, right? So.
Well, I'm going to name one. I won't name the tackle store, but I had a lot of conversations with some stores this past week, and one store in the first 4 days of January for curbside only pickup sold more ice fishing equipment than they did all of the January before, last January before the pandemic hit. Yeah. So that's why when I see those types of signs happening, I'm stockpiling, hoarding, getting ready.
You're a tackle hoarder.
Look at Berkeley flatworms. Max sells flatworms. I mean, I got a bag here somewhere beside me. These things were selling on eBay last year for like, 3, 4, 5 times what they're worth at retail level because they weren't available. And there was like, probably 5 or 6 major tournaments won in the US. I'm not sure how many in Canada. And, those Maxent flatworms were like, they were like gold. And so they're not even available right now yet, but they will. And when they come to the stores, like at all those stores you mentioned, that Natural Sports and Pro Jays and all the different stores, what's going to happen is they're going to sell out real quick. So I'm keeping an eye on inventory out there because a lot of people say, "Oh, you're sponsored." Well, I might be sponsored, but I still spend a lot of money a year being a tackle junkie because I like having what's working and I like to have enough of it that if I won't run out partway through a tournament. I like to have enough where, if that's the hot bite, if it's a green pumpkin flatworm, and that's the bite going on the Thousand Islands or somewhere, wherever I'm fishing, I want to make sure I got enough of them because the worst thing is it's a confidence thing. If you run out of a bait that's working, it is a confidence factor. And the tournament fishing is, which I love to do it. I'm addicted. To it. And I always say I made $1 million fishing tournament. It cost me $990,000 to do it. But or if you want to, said others say no, I won't even say that because I know you're in the tournament business. But there is that one about if you want to, what is that thing now? If you want to win, no, I'm not even gonna say it. I forget.
That's okay, Bob. That's okay.
Hey, COVID. I'm blaming it on COVID. So, somebody said to me, I ran into him in a grocery store the other day. They looked at me and said, "You look like you put on weight." And I said, No, I was fat before the pandemic. So anyway.
I do want to touch on those baits today, just in our conversation a little bit further, because you fish pretty much everywhere, and not just for your show, but for your tournaments and everything else. And you're stemming from all kinds of lakes out in the Ottawa. You fish the Renegade stuff, you fish the Pro Bass stuff here with us. You're fishing even the Niagara tournaments down in the Niagara Open. So what do you got? What are you showing us right now?
Well, that's just a Berkley flatworm I've got rigged up on my drop shot rod here, and I've got Is
that your go-to bait?
If I had one drop shot bait, it would probably be a toss up between this one and the Gulp Fry, the little 3-inch Gulp Fry, green pumpkin, or this particular bait here, the flatworm. But I don't know. Berkley make a lot of good baits. It's a tough call. They've got so many good baits out there. But those two are a couple of my favorites for sure.
Now, are there baits that you use that kind of like are general, that cover that whole broad area? Like we're talking from Ottawa to Erie. If there was a bait that you could say you use at all tournaments, is there one particular bait that comes to mind?
Absolutely. There's one bait. I'm just going through the bags here. There's 2 versions of this bait. It's a Berkley General. And it's very similar to the Gary Yamamoto Senko, except this one has Maxent in it. Okay, so it comes in 3 different sizes, and for smallmouth and largemouth. And I would say the Berkley Power Bait General and the Berkley Maxent General are baits that I have everywhere I go when I'm fishing smallmouth and largemouth. There's no ifs, ands, or buts that there are some in the boat. And I happened to be watching a Mike Iaconelli video the other day on YouTube, and he was talking about how he packs his tournament boat. And it was funny how sometimes you see things and you go, I do that too. But he'll take a color of a lure, and if he knows that, when he's packing his boat for a particular lake in tournament, he'll pack 3 bags of every bait he thinks he might use in soft baits. And that way, he says, for at least if you get on a bite in a day, you're not going to go through more than 3 bags in a day if the bite's really good. Let's say you catch 25 fish or something, or 40 fish, and you go through, say 3 bags of generals or 3 bags of flatworms or whatever they might be. And then he'll restock them out of his truck, but he'll keep 3 of each color in his boat. And And sort of that was a good rule of thumb. And I said, I do that too. Well, if Darren's listening, he'll say, no, you give about 3 dozen of each color in the boat.
He's shaking his head right now. It's like, yep, he does the 3 dozen part. So, so on the colors, that's actually pretty neat because they offer so many different colors, right? So if you had to pick 3 colors, if you were saying, I just want to have 3 colors of the baits, what would those 3 colors be?
Probably, can I have 4?
Okay, I'll give you 4.
Okay.
4.
The standards that I use 90% of the time are 4 colors for smallmouth and largemouth bass in soft bait. Black with blue flake, green pumpkin, and green pumpkin party. And green pumpkin party's got like green and purple flake in it. It's sort of just a little bit of a more sort of non-subtle version of green pumpkin. It's got a little bit of flash in it. Those 4 colors absolutely are 4 colors I always have with me. And there's black brown and that sort of has like a shad-like sort of bottom to it in the flatworm. That's a good color. And there's there's so many different color variations that work. Like in Florida, if I was bass fishing now, I'd be using a lot of either plum or June bug. June bug's a good color. It's kind of a purpley sort of maybe purple with a green flake or whatever. But a lot of colors are regional. But the 4 colors I mentioned, green pumpkin party, black, and black blue, are without a doubt the 4 best colors overall for me anyway.
So they're all kind of a dark shade of color, right? And so how does that affect with water clarity? If you have like a clear water or more of a darker stained water, are they going to work equally, or are you going to use maybe 10 fluids?
Well, that's an interesting question because what happens is, I'm just looking to see if I brought that rod. Okay, here's a good example of that. Okay, so what happened is if you get some watercolor, a little bit of extra brighter color mixed in, a brighter hue with a subtle color can be good. And to give you an example, so the last day of smallmouth season, it was miserable. The last day of November, I'm out on Lake Erie. It's blowing, it's 3 to 5 footers, blowing 30 mile an hour out of the north. There's only one other boat out. He didn't last very long, and the fish were biting good, but the water was all stirred up because the wind had gone from a west to the north, but that several days of west wind had pushed a lot of water in that was kind of off colored. So instead of being that clear Lake Erie like it is after several days of no wind, the visibility on Erie the last day of November last fall was probably about 2 feet, 3 feet. Usually you can see down 15 feet or more, maybe even on a sunny day even more, sometimes 25 feet if it's super sunny and flat. So what we were doing is we were using a tube, and I've just got this one here rigged up. I just grabbed this rod just by chance, and this is a Berkley power tube here. So okay. I've got the power tube in green pumpkin, but it's hard to see it here. A lot of it's worn off, but I was dipping the tail in chartreuse. And there's 2 dips you can use. You can use the original, well, there's a few dips out there, but there is Spike It that's been around forever, and it's the chartreuse dip, or Gulp have a dip, and the Gulp dip is you can get it in chartreuse. And I just was dipping the tail of this power tube in chartreuse just to give the tips of it a little bit of green hue to it, so a chartreuse hue. And I also shrink the night before. I knew it had been blowing a long time, so I took some tube heads. I'll just slide this up so you can see it. Is I shrink wrapped a little rattle right on the shank of the hook, so that it gave it a little click, 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 click as it's dragging on bottom. And it was so windy and so rough and choppy and murky water out there. But that's what I caught every fish that day that I caught. And it was slow fishing for Erie standards. I don't know if I caught somewhere, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 fish, I think, that day. myself,
Oh, good.
and it was all on this tube. But I know the rattle would have helped, and the little bit of color in the tails would have helped too, both for audio, the rattle, and then visual, this. And then of course you got the power bait scent that's infused or built right in, baked into this power tube here. So you had the best of all three worlds there. And it's funny because fishing is playing the odds. Okay.
Yep.
We've talked about having confidence. That's one thing. You need confidence when you go fishing. If you're in a negative mood or you're having problems with a relationship or with business or something, usually you don't have good days fishing if your mind is elsewhere. So you have to be positive when you go out. I knew it was going to be crappy conditions because it had blown and blown and blown out of the west, and then finally it went to the north, but it's still blowing 30 mile an hour that day. I knew it was going to be tough conditions, but it was the last day to go out there to legally fish. And so I wanted to go, and I cleared the schedule and ran down there, and getting prepared for those conditions, and setting up the rods before we even launched the boat because it was rough. I don't want to be out there in 4 and 5 footers trying to tie baits and dip tails and put rattles on shrink tube and put a lighter to them and stuff like that. I want to get all that stuff done before I even get to the ramp, and it was I didn't say it was raining too, but it poured that day. I mean, like there was this much water in the parking lot in areas by the time we quit, and it was pretty miserable. But once again, it's being prepared before you go out. And I know that when you have your normal spring fishing and boat show, there's so many people that are just freaking out seeing all the new tackle and buying what they can get their hands on. They can touch it, they can feel it, which is so great about a consumer show like you have that you guys put on, Andy. It's so neat because it's the first time, at least here in Ontario, where you can actually touch and feel some of the new products that are out. And it's always neat to pick up, a package of baits, and you go through them and you're looking at them like these craws here, these power bait craws or whatever they are. And just you're picking them up, you're looking at them, and you're saying, "Oh wow, I got to get some of those." Of course, that's what tackle stores love too, because they obviously do a very good business there. And all the stores you mentioned, I know all the owners of those stores are all friends of mine, and I can't wait till the stores open so I can go see what they've got in for shipments, because I'm going to be ravaging through it and being one of their earlier customers. I'm not sure though where and what zone. This whole zone thing's got me confused here in Ontario. These colors. Do you know what zone we're in right now?
All I know is we are soon to be in fish zone. That's all that matters.
Yeah, no kidding. Instead of the twilight zone.
I just want some things you just kind of touched on what you talked about that day. Weather is a big factor, and not because you're sponsored by Columbia, because I know they got tons of like clothing reflecting different times of years, but a lot of people put a lot of money and effort into their tackle, right, into their boats. Right. But then when it comes to days when it's raining and being comfortable, like it's usually people really lacking rain suits.
Yeah, that day it was a driving rain. The only way you were going to get wet is if you had a really good rain suit on. You weren't going to get wet, except if you're facing into the wind and the rain was coming at your face and running down your neck. Of course, you can zip up a lot of the rain suits. And on that day, I was wearing a PFG, which is Performance Fishing Gear, Columbia OutDry rain suit. And OutDry is, everybody talks a lot about Gore-Tex, okay? I just got to clear the air about Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is a great product. I used to wear a lot of Gore-Tex rain suits when they first came out, and for years I did, because that was the best technology. That patent ran out like 20 years ago. So it's old technology. And the problem with Gore-Tex is after a while, when it gets dirty and you wash it, and gets dirty, you wash it, well, it doesn't become as waterproof, because as dirt gets into the pores, it doesn't breathe. And so what happens is you still can sweat in it, and you'll perspire. So it's not breathing, even though it may be pouring rain, so you're soaked inside. With OutDry, it is 100% breathable and 100% waterproof. And, so what I do is I layer up on the real crappy days, early spring, late fall when it's cold. And so I'll wear like a Columbia shell underneath with, with a hood. And this will have Omni Heat, that silver reflective material in it, which keeps you warm. It's sort of like the idea of the old space blankets that were out when we were kids. Those space blankets you'd fold out and they were like silver in color.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Sort of that same idea. So the technologies there, I've worked with the folks at Columbia for many, many years, and a lot of folks don't realize they're really a technical clothing company. They make clothing that's very, very technical, much more than a lot of the other manufacturers out there. They don't blow their horn much about it. They're pretty humble, but I will say I've been associated with them for a long time, and they make some incredible clothes to keep you warm and dry on those crappy days. Or if it's hot and pouring rain, they've got, that out dry will keep you still dry, but you'll still be able to breathe and perspire, so you're not sweating in it. And I don't know, I like having, cool clothes to wear, because normally I'm out about 180 days a year on the water. This ice fishing is going to cut me back this year, though, with this COVID, but I'll make up for it. Believe me, this year is going to be a year that if you want me, you know where you're going to find me, out in the middle of some lake somewhere. I'm going to be on the water a lot this year.
So, Victoria, do we have any questions on the screen right now? She's going to dig up a question. We've got tons of people.
I want to mention one thing, Andy. It's a little off topic, okay? But
go ahead, buddy.
It just came up this morning. The founder of this company had texted me and said he had watched the show this morning that was on Global, where I was flipping the heavy cover for largemouth bass and it got me thinking about a company called LandPass. Okay, now this is a company that I've been doing some work with, and that's why I've been so busy. I've been doing other projects as well as the fishing business lately. And this company is like the Airbnb of land rental, and we just launched this less than a year ago. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and there's, I think, 7 or 8 properties on landpassinc.com, the website. It's also an app you can put on your phone, and you can rent these properties daily or several days at a time to go hunting or fishing. But the cool thing I wanted to mention here is there's a lake called Dry Lake, just north of 401, I think like 15 or 20 minutes north of 401, near Tweed, Ontario, just out east. And it's a private lake. And it's a 160-acre lake on 205 acres of land that has turkey and other animals there, so you can either rent it to hunt or rent it to fish. And I looked on the website this morning to see how much it was a day. Now, can you imagine having your own private lake, 160 acres in size, right, for like $180 a day? So 4 of you go into it. And what is that, $45 or something a day per person to go fish. And apparently it's got muskies and other species of fish on it, and it's private. Nobody's fishing it. So
you know what? I don't think we should let the Airbnb people know this, because
I don't let anybody know. But then I thought, Mike had texted me this morning, and it reminded me about LandPass on one of the lakes that I've got to put on my list this year to hit. But it's really neat, and some of these properties you can camp on as well, so you can rent them and camp. So you're talking about a lake. You and 3 friends or family.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. Amazing.
The only people on this big giant lake, 160 acres in size, catching fish. So, but if you're a hunter, this is originally we were thinking more for the hunting crowd is to have LandPass for the hunting crowd to rent properties, daily or multiple days and that. But anyway, I was thinking about that property this morning, and I make notes on everything, right? So I'm making notes on what I need to get for tournament tackle. I doing my hotel reservations for tournaments. What lakes am I going to fish this year? What lakes am I going to try that I've never been to? And I got all these notes written all over the place where I sit at the kitchen table and watch the turkeys out the window and deer and stuff at out here in the rural sticks here, and I'm making notes of this and that. Yeah, it's fun, but I'm ready to get at it now.
Well, just to touch base on the land pass thing, because like with all this COVID stuff that's happening right now, people like I don't know if you've ever driven by a provincial park in the summertime, and you'll drive by a provincial park in the summertime, and the lineups are crazy. You're guaranteed a piece of property that you can camp on, right? For 300-400. That's cheaper than any Airbnb out there, as far as I'm concerned. You're paying like thousands of dollars and not getting anywhere near that wilderness, which is pretty cool. Right. So yeah,
right.
It's a good plug, but it's pretty good. So
I've got my ringer off and my phone keeps dinging and no.
First memory of fishing.
Okay, so we've got some coming in, but I'm gonna have to put my Benjamin Franklin's on here. Oh,
they're
Sandy,
pretty cool. You got like
so
hi Sandy.
she likes being off camera.
What's your favorite memory as a kid?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So what is my favorite memory as a kid? I'll tell you this came up the other day. It's the first time I'd ever told this story. And I was doing Tech Canada podcast with Gary Maxwell the other day, and that's for CEOs and presidents of corporations. I got some like 1,500 members of corporations, and presidents and CEOs are members, and we did this podcast for about 40 minutes the other day, and it was a similar type question, but the question that he had was, what was an influential moment? I think it was something like that of in your early years of growing up or fishing. And as I mentioned earlier, my father was the catalyst to what I do now and what I've done for the last 4 decades. When I was 20 years old, we had heard that Mercury Marine were looking for somebody to do fishing seminars at the big boat show in Toronto. And we had heard they asked Al Lindner. And Al Lindner from, at that time, from the In-Fisherman, when him and Ron ran In-Fisherman, he was too busy. He was booked a year in advance. He couldn't come in the January show. So we went up, my dad and I, who was still alive at the time, and he passed away about a year later or so, but he was alive. And we went up to see Bob Patterson in Mississauga when they had the headquarters on Dundas Street. And we went for lunch with him. And at that time, I was just laid off from a factory, 20 years old. International Harvester and Channel. So Patter, we went for lunch. I told Bob everything I wanted, right? And I wanted to be this, and I wanted to fish tournaments, and I wanted to do seminars. I wanted to be a pro fisherman. Nothing about TV show. That was years before that. So after me telling him everything I wanted, he looked at me and said, "Okay, now that you've told me everything you want, what are you going to do for Mercury?" And that was my first time involved in business and sponsorship and opportunities to how to be a pro angler. And I remember saying to Bob, well, I guess I'm going to have to promote and help you guys sell more Mercury outboards. And that was how our relationship started. He paid me $25 a day to do the Toronto Boat Show for 10 days. And I didn't negotiate hotel fees or food. So I actually went in the hole in that show. But there was about 4 or 5 other companies that saw what I was doing at that show. And then they came on board too that wanted to work with me. And at 20 years old, there I am, Canada's first full-time fishing pro, starving to death, but having a lot of fun doing it. And who cares? You're single, you're footloose, fancy free. I didn't care if I sleep in the back of my car from tournament to tournament if I didn't win enough money. So what I did is I ended up I ended up doing those seminars, and my dad, if he hadn't taken me to Mississauga to go meet Bob Patterson, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. But here's the story I told on Tech Canada, which I've never told until the other day. And it was weird. And it never dawned on me till the other day. When I was about maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years old, my dad took me out of school one day, and he was off that day because he worked 5 days a week at the hospital. But all the other days he worked on the farms and all these other jobs to make money to take, support 4 kids, because he raised us as a single parent. And he actually would take all the neighborhood kids fishing too. But this day was just him and I. It was a rarity when I was that young to just him and I spend time together, because there was, you know, my brother and two other sisters and the neighborhood kids. He was always surrounded by a lot of kids, you know, and used to drive a little Volkswagen Beetle, and he'd take, one time there's 9 of us in that Beetle, if you can believe it, fishing the Rondo Rod and Gun Fishing Derby, and we cleaned house. Everybody won prizes, and it was so much fun. But this day we were on the Thames River fishing down near Kent Bridge for walleyes, spring of the year. I'm young. I'm, like I say, 6 or 7. I'm not sure. And there was this fellow. I can't remember. He had an accent. I'm not sure what accent. You know, if he's German or if he's Hungarian. I don't know. And that's irrelevant. But he was fishing by us. And, you know, after I was fishing a bit, I was sort of wandering around the rocks, you know, and that I stepped on this guy's other fishing rod and broke it. And this guy freaked out. I remember him swearing at me and talking nasty to my father. And I'll never forget it to this day. My dad didn't lose his shit, okay? He didn't lose his cool. He said to the guy, "How much is a fishing rod? How much did you pay for it?" And the guy said, my dad reached in his pocket and gave him the money just to shut him up, right? Yeah. And my dad didn't say anything to me except, "Bob, it's all right. Don't worry. It's all right. It's just a fishing rod, you know." But this guy was nasty, okay? And you know what? That was a turning point as a kid, to have your father support you by taking you fishing, and then support you even further by not cursing at me for making a mistake by accidentally stepping on this dude's fishing rod who freaked out, you know, over it. Yeah. And you know what? If I can say to any parent out there, you know, if you do take your kids or the neighborhood kids fishing or whatever, just like my dad did, treat them with the same respect that you would want to be treated like, and have fun. And that day, I still remember it like it was yesterday, is that even though, and I think I was crying or something because this guy was yelling at me and stuff, but you know, I soon forgot about it because my dad turned a negative into a positive. And that's what fishing can do with other people too. Whether you're having a bad day or not, it can turn into a pretty good day just by the experience. But that was a pretty memorable time. You know, I mean, I only thought about it during that podcast the other day. I'd never even entered my mind for my whole entire life. I never even really thought about it, and I remembered it just while I was doing that podcast. But I've got another question here from Vincent, and it's, where do you find deep water bass hot summer months? Okay, hot summer months. I would say with my depth finder, obviously. So I use Lowrance electronics, and what I like to do is a lot of graphing, a lot of looking. I can't wait to start using a lot of more of this live imaging pushing forward that Lowrance has come out with. You know, with LiveSight. I can't wait to start using more of that. But for the most part, I do a lot of graphing and looking. And when you're fishing deep water smallmouth bass, one thing is if you do your homework before you get out on the water, and I've done a lot of this winter, is I've been on my laptop with Navionics Chart Viewer, and it's free if you go to Navionics website, and I'll go to Chart Viewer, and I'll zoom in. First, I'll zoom out on the lake I'm going to, and I'll be fishing different lakes every week this summer, as I have for the last 40 years during tournaments and all the other things I'm involved in. And I'll zoom in and I'll start picking apart areas of the lake. So when I'm looking for deep water spots, I'm looking for humps, long shelves that go out, points, ridges, where the contour lines go tight together and where they spread out. Yeah. And I'm trying to study what the makeup of that lake is on the bottom before I even launch the boat, you know, coming up this year. And looking at that graph and staring and watching and idling over some of these areas and zigzagging back and forth, is you'd be surprised at how, if you use just your electronic eyes, how you can find the fish a lot quicker than just casting and fishing in deep water. It's a lot easier zigzag around. If you don't mark any fish and the structure doesn't look that good, move on, go to another area. But if I mark something that looks promising, I'm either going to put a waypoint on it or throw a buoy marker out, and then I'll fish that spot where it might be a rock pile or a single boulder or maybe a transition where it goes from sand to mud or gravel, to chunk rock or whatever, and I'll fish that area thoroughly. And I like to move around a lot. Truth be known, when people tell me fishing's boring, they're not fishing the way I fish. I like to move around. And that's why that big black motor on the back of my boat, that Mercury, is awesome. I saw that commercial, by the way, Andy, before we went live today.
Yeah.
For the 600 Verado V12.
Yeah.
Come
I'll
on.
probably put a smile on your face, though.
If I could put that on a bass boat, man, I guarantee you, not only would the hair off my head blow off, but I think the hair on my knuckles would too.
Hey, let's just go to a commercial break and we'll be right back. And we got Bob Azumi here, dude, and only because I want that Mercury motor or something else. So we'll be right back. We're through a commercial break and we'll be right back.
Want to know the difference between power bait and other soft plastics? Ask the fish. Berkeley scientists have. Thousands of flavors tested on thousands of fish. Natural. Man-made. Every bait that's ever hit the water. No matter the shape, size, or color, power bait is the only one that is scientifically proven. Fish bite and will not let go.
There are people who know that there's more to getting there than just getting there. Who know that going fast isn't fast enough. And who know living isn't the same as feeling alive. They're people who aren't afraid to stand out, make noise, make waves, and never look back. This one's for them. The Mercury 115 horsepower and 150 horsepower Pro XS outboards. Built to win tournaments. Designed to win your heart. Mercury, go boldly.
And we are back.
Right. I just rearranging stuff. I got stuff all over here. I got tackle and everything.
Yeah, you know what, dude? Like I've been to your house. I know how much tackle you got. It's pretty crazy, but
You can't
I don't
have
know.
enough.
I don't know how you go through it all. That's the crazy part. That's the
Hoarder's
real
got
crazy
nothing
part.
on me, Andy. Hoarder's got nothing. I could do a couple of year series for them on hoarding. But I think that's my old neighbor used to say, Bob, I think that's because you grew up poor. And I said, what do you mean poor? He says, well, I know you grew up, you didn't have a lot of money, it was a tough upbringing, but I mean, I have no complaints. My dad always fed us well because he was a chef and that, but I mean, we didn't have running water till I was like 13 or 14 years old. We had to go to town to get our water in buckets and stuff. So, I mean, you'd say I grew up poor. So I guess now that life has been good, I tend to keep too much stuff. And
I don't want to make you sound old, but those are like my grandfather's stories. We used to go into town to go get water.
Well, guess what? I'm not your grandfather.
I know.
I don't know. No, I'm not old enough to be your father either. So there you go.
All right,
Hey,
we got a question from Wally Adams here. You know Wally Adams, because obviously you fish about with them, and he wants to know what plans are for the Pro-Am tournament this year. The Pan Am, sorry. Is there any plans for the Pan Am tournament this year or 2022?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Now, you have to realize that the Pan Am tournament moves around, right? From Mexico to the U.S. to Canada. So it's not like it's every year in Canada. So they
That was a
haven't.
great event.
Yeah, so they haven't said anything to me about a Pan Am coming back to Canada, and that's like a whole organization of a bunch of folks from Costa Rica and Brazil and Italy and Mexico, and I mean it's a worldwide thing. So I haven't been talking to those folks to see what's going on yet. I do know that the World Championship is still going to be in Columbia, South Carolina, which is the next one from the Pan Am. That is in November on Lake Murray down in South Carolina. And I know that the Haggerty, Stephen and Phil, and Jason Gramada, and let's see now, Darren and I, and Look over at Darren. Who's Jason Gramada's partner?
He's just left the room, so I can't even answer that.
One.
He's having lunch, I think, upstairs.
I believe that's the 3 teams, though.
Yeah.
And gosh, I can't believe I'm getting this way about forgetting certain people, and then it's going to come to me in a second.
Who's Jason Gramada there for the Pan Am or the down in the States?
World Championship.
World Championship. He's kind of going, oh my God, I can't think right now. You know what?
Nicholas Gendron.
Yeah.
That's his name.
Okay, Nicholas Gendron.
Yeah, Nicholas. So the 6 of us are going to go down and represent Canada. Hopefully there'll be some more alternate teams go down as well. While we had a break, Cameron asked a question, and he asked, what is your favorite fish to catch? He said, mine is black crappie. They fight so good on ultralights. Well, I'm going to tell you, Cameron, my favorite fish to catch and eat is without a doubt black crappies.
Yeah.
Sandy, my wife, doesn't wear jewelry to speak of. She not really. She doesn't wear jewelry or any of that stuff. And she never asked for jewelry or anything for gifts. But if I brought home some fresh crappies and fill them up and clean them, that's better than diamond earrings. She told me that 20 years ago. So hey, I married a cheap date, okay? But I love catching crappies too. I grew up on Rondo Bay down in southwestern Ontario. We fish crappies down there. We had black crappies and white crappies. You got the white crappies in the clay, off-colored water in the open waters of Rondo Bay, and then you got the other breed of crappies, the blacks. They were more in the weed beds and in the canals and things like that. And grew up crappie fishing. Love fishing them. Have fished them all over, from northwestern Ontario to eastern Ontario and all points in between, and love fishing them. And they're so much fun when you find them, because you use a little, like a 16th ounce or a 32nd ounce jig, and you can use a float above that, maybe 10-12 inches above that. And usually if we tip it with either a small gulp lure or a little power bait lure, and just swim it, let that little jig sink down below the float, then swim it, and then let it sink down. And a lot of times your float just sort of goes down. Sometimes your float actually floats sideways, because the crappies with the eyes on the top of their head, they feed upwards, and a lot of times they'll eat that little jig and push it up, and there's slack in your line, and so your float just isn't cocked anymore, and it just lays sideways and flat on the water, and that's the sign of a light hitting crappie. And they're so much fun to catch. So and eat. I don't eat a lot of fish, but crappies, walleyes, and perch, so I do like those.
Okay, so we got a question here from Travis Armstrong. What's the bucket list? What's a bucket list fishing trip you've yet to do? So is there any kind of trip that you'd like to go on?
Woo. Okay, Travis, we talked about it earlier. I'm an antique, okay? Man, I have gone through and worked it pretty good. I've had an incredible career. I've been very blessed with an amazing career. I have fished all over the world. We fished Australia and Russia and South America and Spain and all over the place, and all the different corners of Canada. So if I had it's probably tournaments. I like tournament fishing. So I'd like to fish the U.S. Open on Lake Mead, which is a lousy fishery. I mean, we're talking about bass that, if they're, this long, and they barely measure, you're doing good if you can get a limit of those a day. Yeah. But I'd like to go out and fish in the desert and Lake Mead in the U.S. Open bass tournament. Wow. That's kind of on my bucket list. It'll take probably 4 days to drive there. I think it's like 48 hours or something to get out there. But Golden Dorado in South America, I haven't caught those yet. Paella were pretty cool in Lake in Venezuela, Lake Guri. They get the fangs actually that come up, big fangs. They're pretty cool.
Saber-tooth fish. Yeah, saber-tooth fish.
Never caught a taimen. When we were in Russia, I never hooked a taimen. We saw one from the helicopter. They're like in between a salmon and a muskie, and they got teeth, and they eat things like muskrats and stuff.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, you don't mess with a taimen, but they're pretty neat. They're in Russia and some of the creeks and rivers. Haven't caught those, so those are kind of, they're not really on my bucket list. I'd like to go catch them someday, but because I'm a tournament fanatic, my bucket list is just to fish as many tournaments as I can till I fall over dead. So that's kind of the way it is.
So that's a long time away. So
I've been on so many trips that, Andy, fishing all over the world, that I've been spoiled. So me, I like competitive fishing. I like it when it's just me against the fish and nothing else is going on, and that's kind of what I like to do. But you know what? It's this fishing business, requires a lot of other duties, and doing things like I'm doing today, and appearances, and contests and different things I'm involved in the corporate world, in connection with the TV show and that. It's a busy life, so it kind of hinders me fishing 3 tournaments a week, which I'd love to do.
So let me ask that question in reverse. What was the most memorable trip? Like, is there something that just comes to mind? Like, all those places you've been, like, we just said, you pretty much did it all, or you feel like you've accomplished that whole part of it, but there's always a little more. But was there any, out of all those trips and all those fish, was there anything that just boom comes out at you?
Absolutely. I want to go back badly. So I guess it is on my bucket list, but I've already been there. Right here in Ontario, Lake Nipigon. That place was amazing. John White joined us on a trip there filming about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's uncharted. There's nobody's even charted that place yet. So it's not even in the Canadian hydrographic charts, or there's nothing on it, So you're out there on a lake that's about 4 or 5 times the size of Lake Simcoe. No mapping. And we didn't see a boat in 3 days of fishing. Not one boat fishing in 3 days. And we went 3 different directions in those 3 days. One day went this way, one day went this way, one day went this way. And we ran about maybe 15 miles, 12 miles the first day. We ran about 30 miles the second day, and probably 45 miles the third day. We didn't scratch the surface. We fished like, if you took a 5-gallon bucket of water, we fished a teaspoon of that bucket of water, in those 3 days. And we caught brook trout, we caught pike. We didn't fish the big Lakers that are there. They say they average, I don't know, this is what they say, 30 pounds. I don't know if that's true or not. I know there's been giants caught out of there. I don't know about that average, but who knows? Maybe they do. But even if they average 10 pounds and there's the odd 20 and 30 pounder swimming around, that's huge. But I heard there's more than the odd 20 and 30 pounder. I heard that's a bit, normal fish for there if you pound on them. Pike fishing, walleye fishing, brook trout fishing. I'm talking world-class brook trout fishing. The world record was not just in the Nipigon River south of there that feeds in or out of the lake, I should say, to Lake Superior. But we caught brook trout up to 6 pounds in those 3 days, and it was crazy. I
watched that show. I still remember that show. That was one of my most favorite shows that you did, was that speckled trout show. It was amazing. Darren,
wants to catch some. So after we'd finish, a show or whatever, he'd pick up a rod and we'd be out there and he'd start catching, some 4 and 5 pound brook trout. It's like, are you kidding me? That's how good it was. And it was like smallmouth bass fishing. So what we did there is the first day we went out with a local guide, and he worked at Pasha Lake Cabins where we were staying. It was about a 30-mile drive east of there, so we'd drive west to Lake Nipigon. And the first day this guide showed us what to look for. He said, you're not going to catch any big brook trout today, because he took us to the closest islands to where we launched, which is about 12 miles away or so. And we caught a lot of brookies up to maybe 3 pounds that day.
Wow.
And he said, look for gravel and boulders. Wow, that's just like smallmouth fishing, I'm thinking. And we're using like little Johnson spoons, and we're using small Berkeley swim baits, and we're catching these fish, and we're going, this is awesome. It's pretty good. So the next day, we go back and we said, let's pick another area of the lake. And the guide was the next day's working back at the camp, so he didn't. We thought, let's go explore now that we know what to look for. And that's when we went further from the ramp and found big brook trout. And they were, it's textbook. It's like, if you found a point or a secondary point off an island or off the shore that had, these boulders, like smallmouth boulders, round boulders and gravel, and then you'd catch these brook trout and long cast, crystal clear water. I remember one about 6 pounds following this spoon up that I'm using, and all of a sudden it just nails this Johnson spoon right by the boat, crystal clear water. Probably I had 10 feet of line off my rod tip. It's like a 6 pounder, and it's like, I honestly wanted to say somebody in the boat pinched me if we died and gone to heaven. So that is on my bucket list to go back. I want to go back there and fish it again.
Before we answer this next question, because this kind of correlates to what we're talking about, Nipigon and Northern Ontario. I know you're involved with all the Northern Ontario tourism and all that stuff that goes on up there. This whole COVID, I don't know how it's affected the fly-in type of style resorts. But I would think that all the drive-in resorts would be like wide open for anybody that wants to maybe do that. And is there a website for people to go to? And I'm just, because you deal with that, I don't know if there's one particular website.
Yeah, the Northern Ontario tourism website is where to find out, what lodges are open and all the amenities that they have. And I've worked with the folks from Ontario Tourism now on and off for about probably 25 years, I guess, off and on. And with COVID right now, it's been very, very interesting, good and bad for some of the lodges out there. Yeah. Some of them last year rented out some of their cabins for the whole season to guests. So they were renting out to Canadians who were coming there to social distance, and they were having their own cabins, and they just had it for the whole season. Others were open just as a normal basis, and then others didn't open at all. So it was all over the map for fishing lodges, across Northern Ontario and other parts of Canada. What I would recommend that you do is, a lot of these lodges had a really, really rough year. They some of them I'm sure are going to have a hard time keeping the doors open. I would say that this year you're going to see a record amount of Canadians going to fishing lodges this year. Yeah. I hope I'm right. For their sake and for the people that are going to enjoy the fishing, the fantastic fishing that is offered at these places. And the reason I'm saying that is the last lodge I was at in October this year. And like I said, some of them didn't even open this year, but I was at Killarney Wilderness, Killarney Mountain Wilderness Lodge. And that place was amazing. I mean, this place, I didn't know it. It's like the hidden jewel of the North. They've put millions of dollars into this wonderful facility. It was packed. Everybody was social distancing. They had a small wedding going on, but that was only the one night with, maybe 15 or 20 people. But there were couples from all over Ontario there, and I met a lot of them. And, one couple were in the Tim Hortons business. Another couple, they had started the Gretzky and Weir wines, the guy was telling me, and then he sold his shares. And then another couple that he was a lawyer from Cambridge, but they were jammed. It was full. And so obviously people wanted to get away if they could to these places. So as these different zones open up, as we move into the spring, I would start looking now if you want to book a lodge to get in there, because I'm thinking a lot of them are going to get very busy with Canadians that have been affected by the cabin fever, and they want to get out and enjoy some good fishing. I know some folks that have tried to rent some Airbnbs for tournaments, and already a lot of those are full for this coming summer and spring and fall for the tournaments. You know, some of your tournaments, Andy, I know one of the guys was telling me he was looking for one on in the Kawarthas, and he had a hard time finding one. And then I was talking to a guy at Mercury Marine the other day when I was picking up a motor to get one of the new boats rigged and at the warehouse, and he said same thing. He had a hard time finding a cabin to rent this year for his holidays. So I would suggest, you know, get on the Ontario Tourism Northern Ontario website, start looking around, and you know, there's so many wonderful places to go. I've probably been in Ontario, I'm going to guess, to, I don't know, 40, 50 lodges in my career, maybe more.
Wow.
Probably more. And I haven't had a bad experience at any of them. They've all been good. And, you know, all of them are different. Some of them have lake trout and whitefish and walleyes, and others have pike and walleyes. Others have, you know, smallmouth bass, muskies, that type of stuff. So it's just, we are very, very, what would I say? Yeah, we're fortunate. We got the best lakes in the world. I mean, for diversity, I fished all around the world, not in every country, obviously, but enough that I've seen there's been phenomenal fishing in different parts, both fresh and saltwater. But when you take just Ontario alone, take the radius from Kenora to Cornwall and all points in between, south and north, and I would say we've got the most diverse fishery for multi-species of anywhere in the world. You know, whether it's muskies, salmon out here for, you know, your salmon hunt that you put on, just everything. It's like, go for it. And the only problem I have is there's not enough days in a year to do it all. That's hard to be, you know, specialize in all the species, but I love fishing them all.
So we got a question here from Sean Fortier, and we actually touched base on this yesterday with Jason Bernutz. He actually talked about shoreline fishing, just like literally fishing off the shore. And I'm not sure when the last time you just picked up a rod and went to shores. And there is an episode that you can log back in with Jason Bernutz from yesterday on Places to Go. But do you have a favorite spot? Have you ever just, like, when was the last time? Well, actually, what you just talked about earlier with your dad and fishing off the shore. Like, what would you recommend to someone who's just going to take his kids fishing from shore? A location.
A lot of mouths of tributaries or canals are good, and if there's any public access land, you know, even in a lot of the cities and towns, like you go into Aurelia and Barrie and you know, areas on Lake Simcoe, for instance, where you've got some access to fish offshore, that can be good. You get into the GTA area, and you know, all the rivers like the Bronte and the Credit and those types of things that are, you know, dumping into Lake Ontario hold fish. The conservation areas are really good. I know that, you know, a lot of those conservation areas, like, you know, Bellwood and oh gosh, there's a bunch of them. There's so many of them just out in this area, you know, within an hour radius of Milton, that are very good with crappies and largemouth bass and panfish and pumpkin seeds, and even some of the smaller conservation areas that don't have really big lakes have got a lot of panfish. So that's how we started fishing. As we started fishing, our dad used to take us bank fishing. He didn't have enough money to have a boat when he was alive, and so we had bank fishing. That's how we started. We'd fish off the shore. We'd go to Erie-O, just down the road from where I lived in Blenheim, or outside of Blenheim, and we would fish off the old coal docks there, catching sheephead, perch, rock bass, the odd smallmouth or largemouth would bite there. And, you know, we would catch all these species right off the coal docks in Erie-O, and you know, down there you could go to Rondo Park, fish off the dock in the provincial park. You could fish anywhere in Erie-O around the big pier. There was the East Pier over there, but you had to get a boat to get over there. But then off the where the tugs were, there were some fish off the rocks there, the commercial tugs. it was pretty endless where I grew up. Then you go to Shrewsbury, and in Shrewsbury there were canals, man-made canals that were there, and we'd go catch crappies and bass right off the shore there. That's kind of how I learned how to bass fish, was right off the shore in Shrewsbury, using a lot of lures. And I remember when I was a kid, like I'd be like 12 and 13, 14 years old, and in like Bassmaster magazine and the fishing publications back then, you'd see these little ads, and it'd be like how to get this, man's crankbait or this Rebel crankbait. And, you send like $2 to get it or $5 to get it. And I'll tell you, when that bait would come in the mail and I'd open it up, and then I'd get down to the bay to use it, fishing off the shore, it didn't get any better than that. I mean, that was as good as it got back then. And I'll tell you, it's the same way it is now when I, get another shipment of lures in, more lures I don't need that I've bought or whatever. It's just, I love it. I mean, I'm a tackle junkie. I think Darren will attest to this. I do enjoy my fishing tackle. It's probably a lot more expensive than an addictive drug of some sort, but probably healthier for you too.
Okay, so there's another question here with regards to the new bass regulations, and obviously I'm sure you're aware that Lake Ontario's now will be having an open pre-season type of catch and release only, and I think after talking to Bruce Tufts, like they're basically wanting you to catch and immediately release the fish, so it's not like you put it in your live well and take it for a run. How do you feel about that?
Well, Bruce Tufts is a renowned fisheries biologist down in Kingston, and Bruce has done enough studies on bass, probably in Canada more on bass with him and his team than any other fisheries biologist. So I respect when Bruce comes out with some of his work and studies on tracking bass and caught bass in tournaments and tagged and released and caught again and released again. Some of these fish have been caught like 3 times in tournaments alone that they've tagged. So they've done some incredible work. I think work with the MNR on getting that change for that region of Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River for an early bass season. Now it's closed during the spawn, which is I think all of June and part of July is closed, right?
And they've actually extended into July now, so they've gone a week further into July for
I think it's the second week of July or something.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty good. I hope it helps the economy. I hope a lot of people take advantage of it, go out there, catch, and release those fish back in to the water immediately. But I think that it's enough. It's like Sturgeon Bay. We go to that bass tournament every year.
Yep.
I would say 4 out of 5 years, every year, 4 out of the 5 years, ballpark, maybe 3 out of the 4, but 4 out of the 5, they're not even near spawning yet. They're close, but they're not close because the water is so cold coming off Lake Michigan in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, into those bays that we're fishing, big sturgeon, little sturgeon on the shoreline on the main section of the water, that the water's so cold, those fish aren't even on the beds yet. It's still super cold. And so you're not hurting the fish by catching and releasing them because you're not pulling them off the beds and transporting them anywhere, like to a fry pan or to a weigh-in site or something like that. So the thing is this is really an opportunity for folks to get out and enjoy bass fishing, early, like in April or early part of May, and catch and release. And in some cases, it'll be interesting to see how hard it is to catch those fish because in Sturgeon Bay, it can be a real challenging tournament. Those fish aren't that easy to catch when the water is, in the high 40s or low 50s. They can be sometimes tricky to catch because they're in a transition. Over there in Wisconsin, when we fish in that bass tournament, those fish you can't catch them out deep. For some reason, it's hard to pattern them deep. And when they do come shallow, it's almost like they're in this cold water still. And there's a bit of a shock going on some of the years, where they're there, but they won't bite and they're just cruising around in wolf packs. And you'll see, sometimes schools of them with dozens of fish in these schools. and they're not easy to catch. So it'll be interesting to see what some of the diehard bass anglers find for the early season fishing this year. I'm going to have to see how the schedule plays out. I might get down there for a day or two of fishing. I don't know yet. I haven't really decided that one because it'll be fun to do. But I know it won't help me any for the tournaments that are on 2 months later from then, because whatever you find then is not going to be very beneficial for a tournament that's say in late July or August. So it's more just a fun thing. And I don't know, there's so many things going on in April, May with crappies and walleyes and pike and stuff like that, that trout and everything, that I don't know. We'll see how much of it I do. It'll be interesting though.
There was a second part to that question that maybe I can help offset too, because Andy Todd, who's the biologist for Lake Ontario, he asked about the gentleman asked about also, is there opportunity for tournaments? And that's right now 100% not. Like, they don't want to see any tournaments, whether it's MLS style events or anything else. They want you to just go out and enjoy the fishery, catch the fish, and instantly release it. Like, they don't even want pictures of it. I don't know how they're going to police that part of it. But dealing with the tournaments when we deal with the MNR all the time. And Bruce Tusk, like, I'm not gonna tell you, like, that guy's amazing. And you said it, Bob, like, you can see through our tournaments and all that stuff that you see there for the fish care all stems out of Queen's University and Bruce Tusk's hard work. So, which again, like, guys, make sure you're reading the regulations properly and making sure you know what you can do and you can't do when you're out there bass fishing. I just want to kind of step back a bit, Bob, because like when we talked about the Pan Am, that question came up, and you really opened my eyes to that fishery, when we did the Pan Am game, and it was absolutely crazy how a team from Mexico could literally weigh in, because we did the 2-and-1 because of the bad weather, and come up with almost over 50 pounds of fish with 2 bags. Like, Team Mexico weighed in a 25-pound bag in the morning for 4 hours of fishing. We brought them back in, weighed everybody, put the fish back in the water. They went back out, came back with another 20-plus pound bag. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was on Lake St. Francis, which is part of the St. Lawrence River out of Cornwall, Ontario. And I'll tell you, that was pretty funny, because I'm sure some of the tournament competitors were thinking, Mexico bass fishing they're largemouth fishing, right? And it's phenomenal fishing. And I fished Mexico many, many times over the years. And I fished with a lot of Mexican guides and bass anglers there that are really good. They're as good as any bass angler in the US or Canada or some of the European bass anglers. They're really good. They know how to cast. Their hand-eye is good. They're just good. But I think they were the dark horse coming into the Pro-Am, because they don't have smallmouth bass. No. And for the weigh in the biggest limit the first session in the morning, and I think it was only 3.5, maybe 4 hours of fishing. I can't remember if we fished 7:30 to 11:30 or what.
It was 4 hours. We did 4 hours.
So 25 pounds, 5-pound fish to lead the tournament, and it opened our eyes up. I mean, I knew somebody was going to weigh in some limit that would be, close to that, but it was pretty cool, and I was so happy for them. And we had the team from Akwesasne, from their community in it. We had all the ringers from the U.S. and Team Canada, and for Team Canada to overall win the tournament by 0.01 of a pound.
Wow.
I mean,
I remember that.
0.01 of a pound, Annie? Would you say that you have crumbs bigger than that coming off your fork when you're eating?
Dude, that was crazy. I couldn't believe it. And and the guys that were there, we had like both father and son, the Martins, right? They were there. We had all kinds of like really, and that's where I met Brian Latimer.
Jacob Wheeler, Mark Daniels. I mean, Wheeler's ranked number 1 on Bass Fan in the States out of all the circuits. He's number 1 bass angler. You get all these sticks. I mean, they sent up their top guns, and we're up there. I mean, I was so proud of our team. We did so good, and everybody had a story about the last fish they caught that was really neat, or the turning point was the 6-pounder that one of the guys caught, or
Jason Gramado got the big fish.
the last cast, and stuff like that. It was just so neat.
So last year, because we keep in contact with a lot of those guys now, and they were all planning on coming up to fish the Franny Cup. Brian Latimer still till today talks about, I'm going to be there this year. If that border's open, I'm going to be there, right? So it was actually a great event, and I want to thank you for opening our eyes up to that. That was absolutely a fishery and a half, and we're looking forward to going back there in October. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out this year.
Well, I think I told you, Andy, it's got everything that a tournament needs. It's got water that's big, but it's got water that's protected on big winds. So you can fish any wind, you can still get out and catch them because the fishing's so good there. Largemouth, smallmouth, close to the border for the Americans like Latimer and Martins and all them. They can come up and cross over at Cornwall. Cornwall, as a city, has got all the amenities, restaurants, hotels, etc. And boat launch, everything is right there, and it's an awesome place to fish. It's so close to so many people, yet has so many fish, and that's what I love about this province is, we got these areas that are all over, and even in the populated areas of southern Ontario, and I know I go to a lot of wonderful lodges in northern Ontario, but we also have great fishing here in the south too, and that kind of spoils us. I just can't wait to get back out. You have no idea. I am biting the bullet here, by not fishing right now and trying to be, sort of responsible. And don't ask Darren how the garage is going, okay? I said that I was going to clean last winter or spring, and I haven't. And I said I'd do it this winter, but I've almost done most of my projects of articles and things that I might be able to get at it before tournament season starts. But that's one thing I will say to you folks that are watching right now too, is organizing your equipment will give you more quality time on the water. And if you're organized before you go on your trip, whether it's a family fishing trip or a day outing or a tournament or whatever it might be, if you're organized, I guarantee you, your brain is free. You can think clear, make the right decisions out there. And that's what I'm going to say. All the bad tournaments I had, Andy, in the last few years, I'm going to claim it to being disorganized. Okay,
that's disorganized. Oh, I thought you were blaming it on Darren.
Darren's got a good head on his shoulders. He keeps me half straight. He'll tell me things. Sometimes I don't listen, and after the fact, I'm thinking, well, I should have listened to him, because we might stay in an area maybe a little longer. We may make a run longer or farther than we should, when we should have fished closer to where the tournament was out of, and all those things. But those are, life's full of decisions, right? We all make good and bad ones.
I do want to touch base. We're almost with our time here, so what I wanted to touch base on is a little bit on the tournament stuff. And actually, you just brought up a really good thought there, decisions on tournament day. How long do you stay on a spot when you're fishing a spot, or even when you're doing a show before you move on to the next location?
Well, there's so many variables, but the one thing is I like to catch. And in tournament fishing, when you're in a team tournament with two people fishing, it's really not about going through a ton of fish. Your best bet is to try to get your 5 biggest fish, even if that means getting only 10 bites or 8 bites a day. If you get those 5 of those in the boat, they might be big, and that's how you win them. My problem has been the last number of years, and I've had lots of success in tournaments in the early years, not as much as I'd like in the recent years, and I'll tell you why it is I'm going to save face when I get to the tournament. I want to make sure I got 5 in the live well swimming around, and that's not the way to win tournaments. The way to win tournaments is go for big bites and not as many fish. And generally, at the end of the season, if you go for bigger bites in areas where you're not going to catch numbers, but the fish are a bigger average, you will win more tournaments. And if I look at all the great tournament anglers we have here in Ontario that have their moments fishing tournaments, they're not catching a ton of fish. They're catching big fish. And And how do you do that? A lot of different ways. It might be isolated spots. It might be using, your side imaging, looking for rocks in the weeds for largemouth bass and finding weeds out in deep water that have rocks in them. And that's where you're going to catch maybe a big largemouth or two. And now let's say you have 15 of those little isolated rock piles in a tournament, and you do a run and gun and you fish these throughout the day, and you catch 8 or 9 fish in the day, and 5 of them happen to weigh, 4 pounds each. You got 20 pounds, you win the tournament. But in my case, I'm going out there to catch 20 or 25 or 30 fish in that same tournament. And guess what? My biggest one's 3.5 pounds. And I weigh 16 pounds, and I'm way down the list, let's say, of largemouth fishing. And that's because I fish too conservative for numbers of fish. And that's probably, the TV show has made me do that over the years too. 2 reasons. One, when we go out to film shows, I like to get it over with so I can get on to the next tournament. So a lot of times I'm out there to shoot a show. I don't want to spend sun up to sundown shooting the show. I want to go out and in 2 or 3 or 4 hours, get the show shot so I can, get ready for the next event coming up that weekend or, later that week or whatever. And, because I've been doing the show for like 37 or 38 years, that I just, it's like going to the office, get the show done. Another reason is when people recognize me, and I don't bring in a limit of fish, I get it all the time at the weigh-ins, folks that are watching the weigh-in, what happened? I didn't catch them. What else? I suck? Yeah, I suck. We didn't catch them. But the thing is unfortunately, it's that way of thinking up here that I gotta, kind of clear it a bit. I gotta get a lobotomy or something, clear it out a bit. I gotta get out of that, get a limit of fish type of thing, and try to catch 5 big fish. And who cares? In the odd tournament, you're gonna come in, you won't even have a limit. And people are going to say what happened, and you're going to have to answer them that I made the wrong decisions or I didn't get bit. I didn't get the bite. But I will say this, that you have to have a mentality to win in these events. And so for you folks out there that'll never fish a tournament ever, what I'm saying is go out, have fun, catch a bunch of fish. And that's what I do in a lot of cases for fun fishing and in too many tournaments in the past. But this year, my new way of thinking is going to be to fish a little more type A, a little more like just try to do better by getting the big bites. And Andy, there's a lot of great anglers now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Years ago, fishing tournaments, if we didn't win them back in the 80s, Wayne and I would be livid. We'd be driving home mad, if we didn't win a tournament, we'd be mad. Every year we'd have several wins. Now, if I'm in the top 30 out of, 100 boats, I'm happy type of thing.
Well, dude, you're fishing against guys like Corey, Chris, like you're fishing against some heavy sticks out there that they live and breathe it. And then it's obviously difficult to be the best at everything. But like, honestly, I think you're doing a good job. You definitely proved your case down in Quinte last year. You did a really good job in Quinte. I always thought you were a smallmouth guy, and you know what? That was a largemouth fishery. You did really, really good there. I thought that was surprising.
Largemouth over smallmouth. If I had to choose one, I would pick largemouth any day. I just like fishing them more so. But I mean, I like fishing smallmouth too. Don't get me wrong. It's just that there's so many tournaments that are smallmouth. You need smallmouth to win. Like on the Thousand Islands and on Lake Simcoe and on Lake Erie and all those places. So if you don't fish smallmouth, you're not going to win. So I grew up fishing largemouth bass primarily and a few smallmouth. And then as years went on, smallmouth dominated these lakes as they got clear with zebra mussels and that. So, but it's, it's amazing. I eat, sleep, and drink tournament fishing. But I also realize that being addicted to that is not what everybody's deal is, and I know that 99.9% of the people fish to have fun. And my fun is competitive tournament fishing. That's all. And I like golfing too, but I suck at that too. So anyway.
There's a question here about non-boaters and what you expect, because you fish a lot. You fish the Canadian Open many times, but okay, just answer this question. I guess is pretty good. What from a non-boater in a bass tournament? So like I don't know if he's reflecting to possibly this is Tim Zadu. I don't know if I said that right. I think that's right. Zadu.
Mm-hmm.
And going in as a non-boater or fishing as a non-boater, like what do you? Any tips for that non-boater and coming out and possibly drawing you in a Canadian Open event?
Well, I love the Pro-Am events. Canadian Open, gosh, I've got a few seconds and 3 firsts. I love that tournament. It's been very good to me, which is a Pro-Am type format. I've met a lot of wonderful people in the Pro-Ams and had incredible fishing days with them. And a lot of the AMs that I've had in those tournaments have since become, pro, right? And they
Your
fish
competitor.
I mean, Jim Estabrook, through him and Mike own Fishing World. I remember drawing Jim in Kingston at one of the early Canadian Opens back in, I don't know, probably late 80s or something like that.
Yeah.
And here Jim's been around forever, and so he fished as an AM. But what I would suggest in that case, if you want to fish a Pro-Am tournament and fish with some of the big, hot sticks like the Johnstons and all the other guys that are fishing these deals, is that, talk to the guy that you're going to fish with the next day, the night before when you get drawn, to make sure that, they're going to bring, they may bring baits and say, don't worry about lures or don't worry about rods or reels or lures. As in my case, if a person doesn't have the rods and reels and lures, they can use some of mine in the tournament because I want them using the right baits. If we're going to be fishing, smallmouth bass, I want them using, gulp fries and flatworms and all those Berkeley baits. Or if we're fishing largemouth, I want them using, creature hogs and chigger craws and things like that. So I will have those baits. And one thing is in these Pro-Ams is because it's a combined weight of whatever the amateur catches and whatever the pro catches, these 2 weights go together. So your 5 heaviest fish as a team for that day. Then they'll fish with another pro the next day. The format is second to none because it builds camaraderie between you and the person in the boat. You're not fishing against them like some of the tournaments we fish in the U.S., where you draw a partner and you're both fishing for your own fish. So, the guy in the back of the boat's keeping his fish in the live well, and then the other side of the live well, you're keeping your 5 fish. And, you're trying to catch 5 big ones, and that person's trying to catch 5 big ones. And it gets a little sometimes competitive in the same boat, which I mean is still fun, but it's not near as fun as fishing as a team in a Pro-Am type event. And that's how that U.S. Open is on Lake Mead as well, Andy. That format is one of the very few tournaments in the U.S. that is similar to your Canadian Open, which you combine the weights together. So I recommend anybody that's never tried tournaments that might have an inkling to try them is to get involved as an amateur in a Pro-Am, see how you like it, get your baby toe wet, and who knows, maybe it'll hook you and you'll become as addicted as I have for the last, 35 years, 47.
You might draw Bob Azumi. You might actually draw Bob Azumi, which is real cool. So, Bob,
I'll even bring the sandwiches.
I'll bring the sandwiches. Don't worry about that, dude. We haven't talked about food today, and I'll tell you, the funny thing is your dad used to be a chef. So is that where you got all your food, your foodie part was from your dad?
I didn't pay attention to it because he treated us so good. He cooked everything. So I had to learn on my own after he passed away when I was like 21 years old. I had to learn how to cook, and it was kind of weird because I didn't know how to cook anything. So, but I do remember watching him occasionally, I'd do this and do that. But I obviously was not a good student, but I learned to cook a few things. I tuned in yesterday to this virtual spring fishing and boat show, and I was watching Chef Benny do that deal with the veggies and the shrimp and the cheese and all that.
Yeah.
I'm watching him do that, and I got so hungry. I went and did some stuff up on my own there, and it had a good supper. But I want to take that guy on a fishing trip.
He would probably come with you in a heartbeat. Oh yeah, I fish with him all the time. He thinks he's better than me, but
I know you like to cook too, but I really I just like the way he kind of reminds me of my dad, you know.
happy go lucky guy, man. At the show, he's very much like that. So like,
Yeah, I was watching him when I cooked that up in the fry pan yesterday. Go, hey, I wanna hang with him because now that I'm older, I love being around chefs and watching how they do things, you know. And one thing I have learned is they don't overcook things. They're very, if it's anything, it's like fishing. It's timing, you know. It's all timing on how they cook the meats and the veggies and that, so that everything still retains the flavor and the texture and all that stuff. And I bet you're starving right now, at this time of day.
Dude, I don't know, man. I'm not starving, but I'm doing actually pretty good. I got some weight still to lose. I want to make myself look I want to get skinny like you. You lost a lot of weight, so that's pretty good.
Wear dark, okay? I'm on a black couch.
Is that how it works?
Columbia shirt. Just wear dark, you know. And usually when I come to your show, I'm wearing like a black Columbia shirt, and people look at me and say, "You lost weight, eh, Bob?" So I learned that from my wife years ago. Well, actually, it wasn't. She's always been skinny, but I don't know. Somebody told me that. Somebody's wife told me that wear black makes you thinner.
Well, that's a pretty good thing. So, you know what? We're gonna be moving on to our next talk. Actually, I think Chef Benny's on next. Is it Chef Benny Victoria's on next? So he's gonna be coming on next. It's funny you mentioned that.
Cooking. Well, he's doing some cooking.
I just want to say one thing before I do let you go. On a real quick note, is like one thing that like talked about that speckled trout, and I remember that show like it was yesterday. I love that show still to today because we used to hunt speckled trouts when we were kids. But the one thing from your show that I constantly repeat is 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. And do you treat that like is that your same model for tournaments as well? Or is that like, that's your saying? When I think of that, I think of you every time.
Yeah, I think it probably 90 to 95% are in 5 to 10% of the water now. And not to say the fishing's bad, it's just that, fish are on very specific things nowadays, or different areas of the water column or around cover or structure. And what that has caused us to do it's caused us to think outside of the box more. And if anything, it's been the most interesting part of my career is keeping up with the knowledge, both on fish movement and the technical side of it, on using graphs and all these things with down imaging and all the different, shooting forward with your transducers and stuff, and trying to keep up with the technology because, we have equipment now that we never had years ago that is incredible. You still got to go out and find the damn things and catch them, though. And finding fish is something that a lot of people don't spend enough time on. And, it's nice to have the right equipment, having the right rods, the right reels, all the, latest, greatest toys, like this extra long distance Revo bait caster, and all those things help you catch more fish. But if you're not around them, you can't catch them. And that's why, when I get on my Navionics and I look for spots and then I get on the water, I don't try to get too much in my head of where the fish are going to be till I just check all kinds of different variables out there. I'm checking shallow, mid-depth, deep, and I'm trying to do a little bit of all of that in every day I'm on the water to see if I'm missing something. Because as an angler, there's always pastures that are greener on the other side. You have the best day of your life, and then you go, I wonder what I could do next time I'm out there to even better one, right? So that's what I like about fishing is, you're never done learning, Andy, and that's I think the way we should wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to stop learning, and when we do, then you know what? Then you've learned it all. So then it's time to move on to something different. Probably is the best way to say it. So, Bob, I'm going to tell you first off, Darren's been great. He's been helping us out here. He's in the behind the scenes. Victoria's here. I got my niece here, and we're all in a bubble because we've been here for 3 days now, and Nicole's been doing fantastic. my wife, everybody has really contributed. All the guys like yourself that have come to support this and breaking up this winter. And hopefully next year we're back to where we need to be. So I can't thank you enough for being here. I would definitely like to have you on like an evening talk with us for like we did last year for in regards to the CSFL and some of those new waters. You know, we're going to St. Lawrence this year. We're working with Georgian Bay. We don't know if that's going to happen yet, but we're working with all these different areas. And you know, you've approached all these areas over your career, and it's you know, what you have to say is very important to everybody. So.
Well, Andy, I just want to say thanks for having me on. And I want to thank you and the rest of the Pilata family, because I know, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I know that people watching that know you personally know this, but it's the hardest working family in the fishing business here in Canada is the Pilata family up there in Stouffville. And we appreciate all the work you do with the tournaments, Spring Fishing and Boat Show, the other shows that you do. And I'd also like to thank the first responders out there. And I talked to my sister Lynn the other day. She's a retired family doctor. She's working 6 days a week. I think she had 5 days off the month of January. 4 days of her week is doing COVID checks. 2 days of the week she does needles and vaccines. And the other night I spoke to her 6:30 at night. She said, "Hey, what's up, Bob?" I called her on her cell, and she was in her PPE equipment doing vaccines. And I said, "Oh, I didn't know you were still working." It was like 6:30 or 7 at night. She called me at 10:45 that night on her way home. And I said to her, "Lynn, have you had supper yet?" She goes, "No, I haven't. I've been working all day." And she was pulling in the driveway still at 11 when I was talking to her. And first thing she has to do is take all the clothes she's wearing off, throw them in the laundry, have a shower, and then eat when she's working that afternoon shift. She hadn't eaten till early that afternoon. And here it is, 11 at night, I'm talking to her. And so to all of those folks, the first responders, I say we appreciate the work you're doing. When we get through this, I hope I can take all of you fishing, but we'll see how that goes. I hope you get out and enjoy some outdoors and fresh air, because wearing all of the masks and you know, the shields, the face masks, and the gloves and everything, it can't be fun. You know, working 8-9 hours a day, 6 days a week doing that. So we appreciate it.
Well, Bob, I just want to say thank you once again, buddy. And I guess we'll probably be talking in the next little bit. So I really appreciate you coming on. And I think a lot of stuff he says is very helpful to everybody. So thumbs up. Bob Izumi, ladies and gentlemen. Couldn't ask for a better guest. And you know, I'll be looking forward to bringing them to you guys live next year. And you can always just tune into our tournaments or summaries, and quite a few of them. You can watch how well he does. And that's a big thing for me, is like, you know, when I see that credibility that stems out beyond the TV show, because I've known Bob. I've competed against him years ago, you know, he's a great person to be on the boat with. We just did he did a muskie episodes with Jim Fleming at St. Clair. This was back in the early fall. That was actually incredible, and I'll tell you, Jim Fleming was one of our panelists last year for the Muskie Sundays, and he's the type of guy that you should seriously get on that boat. As Megan said yesterday, that whole St. Clair water system is incredible for the amount of muskies you catch there. Not just big or small, they're everywhere, right along the chart, and it's a lot of fun. And it'd definitely be a blessed day to get out there and have some fun with Jim Fleming and fish some muskies. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we come back. We're going to come back to, I believe Ben's on next, and he'll be showing you his cooking segment, and I'm not sure what that is right now, but I can tell you it's going to be real good, as Bob said. Stay tuned.
This segment is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly.
Powerfully crafted, gracefully refined.
Hey guys, Steve from Mega Juice. Show special. Purchase a 36-volt lithium set and receive a free 4-bank charger valued at $650. Give us a call.
Welcome to Marsh's Marina, where we are the largest Kingfisher dealer in Ontario and the largest Suzuki outboard dealer in Canada. These are the Kingfisher welded plate sport fishing boats. They are the most robust, heavy-duty fishing boats you will find in the market, and these will outlast your grandkids. Built in Vernon, British Columbia, these Canadian-made boats will do everything you need and more.